Hey everybody, my name is Jason Dion, and with me is Alyson Laderman. I am the Chief Product Officer and founder of Akylade. Alyson is our Chief Executive Officer and our Chief Legal Officer. Um, excuse me. I have about 20 to 25 years of experience and background in cybersecurity, working for the government as well as for private industry. Alyson comes to us from the legal field. She had about 20 to 25 years of experience in the legal field and then switched over into our technology side. And has been working with a lot of organizations in the legal field on how to use technology and how to secure their data as well. And now she runs Accolade. Today, we're going to be talking about the certifications that are available specifically for cybersecurity. And we're really taking a look at it from a non-technical major perspective. So ones that don't require coding, ones that don't require engineering backgrounds, that you can then implement into your career paths as you move forward. Today we'll be talking about a couple of different things. We'll be talking about the different types of certifications that are out there, relevant certifications for non-STEM roles, when to get certified, ways to get costs and what the costs are, what the discounts you may be eligible to get, what a renewal cycle is and maintenance and CEUs and all of those things. Then we'll talk about any final thoughts and we'll take questions from you all in the audience. All right. So first, let's talk about what is a certification. So a certification really is a third-party credential to validate or verify that you have specific skills or knowledge. And usually these are very time limited, unlike your university degrees. When you get a university degree, it's good forever, right? Once you've gotten your degree in math or science or computers or whatever, it's good forever. Nobody says, "Oh, in 3 years you need to go back and retake your degree because it's been 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road." When we look at certifications, they can be either role-based, vendor-based, or a foundational overall knowledge-based exam. We'll talk about those in a second as well. Where certifications really fit in is as a way of not just verifying your skills, but verifying that they have currency and that you are still up to date and current with the latest environment. I'll give you an example. I got my master's degree in IT and information assurance, or cybersecurity as we call it now, back in 2011. When I took my degree program from 2009 to 2011, we didn't even talk about cloud computing, even though cloud computing was a thing as early as 2007, 2008. And the reason is colleges are a little slow to adapt to new technologies often, right? Unless you're at a research university where you have a professor who is researching new things and then sharing that in the classroom, you're going to be getting basically standard textbook education. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it does take time to write and publish these textbooks and then to get them adopted by the school. When I used to be a professor, I taught at 3 different schools, both at the community college level, the university bachelor's level, and at the master's level. When I was choosing a new book, generally, by the time I was able to look at the book to see if we wanted to adopt it or not for our classroom, it had already been out for a year. And by the time it got to us at a year, it already took them 1 or 2 years to write that book. So the information tends to be 2 years, 3 years behind in most cases by the time it gets to you in the classroom. Now, if you're learning something like biology or math or physics, probably not a big deal because those things don't change every couple of years. But when we deal with things like technology, and we talk about things like cybersecurity degrees or computer science degrees, things change very, very rapidly. And so what you learn in college, while valuable, is not as applicable to the real world by the time you graduate. Just think about a standard 4-year degree. By the time you started learning something, let's say you all are seniors right now, that means you joined in 2021. Well, in 2021, we didn't even have ChatGPT. We didn't have customer facing AI. Now that's all anybody talks about. And so, how do you get that education when it's not part of your degree program? Because it takes the school usually 2, 3, 4 years to add or remove classes or add or remove new books. That's where certifications come into play. And so, what a lot of universities are doing now is, as they're going through their computer science programs or their cybersecurity programs, they are implementing certifications into the course materials. Instead of just saying this is a security course, they're saying this is a security course, but we base it on the CompTIA Security Plus exam. And the reason they do that is because when the exam changes, which it does every 3 years, they automatically will then switch without having to go through the whole new board approval and curriculum change because they're still aligned to the Security Plus exam, but to the latest version. And so we're seeing that a lot in colleges. More importantly, from an employer side, we look at certifications to validate you have currency because once you graduate, let's say, Alyson, I'm going to date you a little bit here. When did you graduate with your bachelor's degree?
Uh, 2000.
Yeah, 2000. I got mine in 2005, right? Have things changed since 2000 and 2005? Well, yeah, a whole lot, right? I got my first IT certification, which is the A Plus exam, back in August of 2000, right? Which was almost 25 years ago. When I took the exam, they just introduced a brand new thing called USB. Right now, we all think of that as just second nature. It's everywhere. In fact, we've got multiple generations of USB. Back then, it was Gen 1, right? We still talk about floppy disks, right? We talked about hard drives being like 40 gigabytes. That was a large hard drive back then. Nowadays, I have thumb drives that hold a terabyte of data, which is 20 times as much data as those old hard drives used to. And so the point is that technology changes and certifications are much faster to adapt to this than our college degrees. And so a lot of colleges and a lot of employers ask for certifications in addition to your degrees. Ali, do you have anything you want to add on the big idea of like what a certification is and why they're important?
No, I think you've covered everything, right? It's keeping yourself current, keeping yourself knowledgeable, validating those skills. One of the things Jason has said before and will continue to say is that especially in the cybersecurity field, you are constantly learning, you're constantly evolving, you're constantly educating yourself and trying to keep ahead of where technology is going, where the threats are coming from, what the thought process is, where what you need to adapt to. And so certifications can be that extra piece for you to stay atop and ahead of what's coming down the pike so that you can best perform your job and your roles. So it's not just a way to get into a job, but it's also a way to skill up within your current, or future, right? In your cases, profession. So they can be used in a lot of different ways. And so it's really taking that mindset of why are you taking a certification? What are you trying to get out of it? When you look at it from that perspective, you're going to get a lot more out of that experience and the knowledge from it.
Thanks, Al. All right. So let's talk about the categories of certifications. There's really four main categories, right? We have what we call foundation or entry level, and these tend to be very junior in your career, and they tend to be very knowledge based. The second type we have is what are called role based certifications, and these may be based around a certain job or role that you want to get one day. This could be like a digital forensics technician. This could be an ethical hacker, a GRC, which is governance, risk, and compliance auditor. It could be a cybersecurity administrator. It could be, information assurance management. It could be any kind of role that you have. In the case of a college, we may have a certification for a teacher to be able to teach in the classroom, right? There might be a different one for a professor. There may be a different one for a teaching assistant. There may be a different one for, let's say, a student. My oldest kid is entering college, and they have to take, that year one welcome to college course. Every college calls it something different, but it's usually like one credit. It's like how to get online and use the library, how to pick your schedule, how to make sure you're doing the right things as you're getting it imported to college. And that's a role-based, course in that case. It's new students have to take it, right? And so that'll be a role-based. Another type is vendor-based. There are certifications specifically made for certain tools or certain vendors. For example, Amazon Web Services or AWS has a whole certification pipeline with 20 or 30 different certifications to teach you and certify you on how to use the cloud and different cloud services. Microsoft has the same thing for their Microsoft Azure product. Google has the same thing for the Google Cloud. Cisco has the same thing when it comes to routing and switching, and they've had that for probably 30 years. It's the number one certification if you want to be a network engineer is the Cisco CCNA, right? And so these are vendor-based things. If you take something like the Cisco CCNA, you're only going to learn how to operate Cisco equipment, routers and switches, not Brocade switches, not HP switches, not Juniper switches. Those are different. Now, if you have a CCNA, can you learn the others? Yeah, there's like an 80% overlap, but you are specifically getting Cisco training in this case, not something that's going to apply to everything. And then there's also specialty areas. And we talk about specialty areas. These are things like open source intelligence, social engineering, compliance, forensics, whatever that specialty item is. And we call these like kind of advanced level certifications. That's where you'll find these once you have a role and you're getting very, very deep and very, very technical in that role. For most people, you'll see that their big area of certification is going to be foundation and entry level to try to break into the industry, and then vendor based on the technology that their employer uses. For example, at Akylade, we rely on AWS. So our technical folks have to have their AWS certifications to be able to work on our equipment. If they have an Azure certification, it's helpful, but it's not as helpful as having AWS because AWS is what we use. And we want to test specifically on that. Think about it like if you're a Mac person, getting a Windows certification is not going to help you much. And conversely, if you're a Windows person, getting a Mac certification is not going to help you much. You need the one for the equipment your organization is going to be using. I'll pause there and let Ali any thoughts she might have on these different categories.
No, I think you covered it.
Okay, cool. And then, for Akylade, we are a certification company. We basically break our certifications down into three main areas. One is foundational or entry level. So all of our certifications, we have an entry level one, which is knowledge based, right? So it's going to test you on the knowledge of the thing that we are covering in that certification. For example, in cyber resilience, we talk a lot about the NIST cybersecurity framework. And as you go through the foundational exam for that, CCRF, which is the Certified Cyber Resilience Fundamentals exam, that will teach you exactly all the pieces and components of the NIST cybersecurity framework and how they're used in the real world. Then you go to our second level, and that becomes role based. Our second level is our practitioner series of certifications. So with the cybersecurity framework one, or the the Certified Cyber Resilience Practitioner exam, CCRP, that one is role based, right? And it's specifically focused on GRC and GRC auditing, which is governance, risk, and compliance, right? And so that's how those work. But we have a third set of certifications that are what we call our specialist certifications. And these are ones that are very, very focused and in-depth and hands-on for a certain tool or a certain product. The first one of those is coming out soon. It's called the CNSS, which is the Certified Nmap Security Specialist. And that is based on the Nmap or network mapping tool that's used to find vulnerabilities and holes and misconfigurations across your network. So that's kind of how we play with these. We don't do vendor based. We don't do stuff that is specific to Cisco or AWS or Azure. If we have cloud talk, we talk about all three of them, not just one of them, right? Because we're more generic that way. And not necessarily generic, but more specialized on the roles and the specialty areas. All right. So we talked about roles without coding and engineering. There's a lot of different roles out there that you might get into that touch tech, but are not directly tech, right? These are things like CTI, cyber threat intelligence, OSINT, or open source intelligence investigations, social engineering and red team support, governance, risk, and compliance, or GRC, cybersecurity policy and law, risk management and cyber insurance, or technical writing and cyber journalism. All of these are tech adjacent roles where it helps to have some information, but you don't have to be an in-depth specialist. You don't have to be a coder. You don't have to be an engineer, right? If we go into some other areas, things like ethical hacking, that requires a lot of coding, that requires a lot of technical experience. If we talk about cybersecurity analysts, that requires a lot of technical experience to review logs and vulnerabilities and find the right solutions to it. But these grouping here that I have on the screen are ones I see a lot of people getting into that don't have computer science degrees, that don't come from a STEM background necessarily. For example, social engineering and red team support. I had somebody who had a master's in communication, and she worked as red team support. If you're not familiar with the term red team, that's hackers, penetration testers. You're working on behalf of your client to break into their systems and be able to find your way in and then report back to them. And she did that because she had the gift of gab. She was really good at socializing. She was really good at communicating. And so for her, she did a lot of the social engineering work and a lot of the red team support as they were trying to break into an organization. I have somebody else who came from an accounting background, and he is now the lead for GRC for BlackBerry, which was you all are probably a little younger, remember, but they used to have these phones that ruled the world called BlackBerries with the little keyboards on them. Those were kind of the first smartphones. That was back in the early 2000s through like 2010 period. Once iPhones came out, that kind of killed that company, right? And they've switched now to a software company, and they do a lot of software on top of Android and on top of iPhones. But they used to be, the largest smartphone provider in the world, right? And then when iPhones came out, just kind of they didn't shift fast enough. That company is actually still a multi-billion-dollar company, and the guy who works there for GRC, he's not a technical background. He came from an accounting background, and he came from the CPA path. He was a certified public accountant, and then he moved over into this GRC role because that's where he really liked it. And there's a lot of correlation between accounting and bookkeeping and GRC and auditing, so that you'll see that. Cybersecurity and policy and law. Allie, you can speak to this. I mean, you're a lawyer, right? If I want to be a cybersecurity lawyer, I can't come from a computer science background. I have to have a law degree. I have to have my JD, right? Allie, can you speak to that for a moment?
Yeah, I mean, and that's a developing area right now. In fact, I was just looking on LinkedIn, and the amount of jobs posting for people in cybersecurity policy and law is kind of astounding. Or quite frankly, it is one of the highest grossing, like growing areas where they're looking for someone with that JD background, but with that also cyber understanding and that greater knowledge of the risk assessments, of that governance, of the policies, of the regulations. Because one of the things with law is you have to know what the laws are, and not only just here in your state, but in all of the states, as well as anything that's federal, but then anything international as well. Because the way that it works here, especially in the states, is they can consider anything as what is that normal use and customary. And so it's an interesting developing area because even if there aren't written laws and regulations, you need to know what else is out there because the courts can still consider that and create a new law based on that, right? A new standard. So it's a growing area where it's interesting because a lot of lawyers aren't very technical, right? And so if you've got that dual interest of a bit of law and a bit of technical, you'll do really well in that field because they need somebody who has both that technical type of mind. And again, not coding, but more a big picture of, oh, this is how an AI system is put together. This is what the security issues could be. How do I advise a company to secure their AI systems that they're knowingly using or they're not knowingly using, right? That it's built in and their employees are already using it type of thing so that they can be secure, so that they're compliant with the regulations. And so they don't get sued for millions of dollars for not doing something correctly. So it's a very much big growing area. The positions are definitely starting to pop up more and more. I see them every day because they show up in my feed because I fit both of those categories now. And it's something to keep an eye on if you have any interest, but you would have to get that JD first to be able to be in that law.
Yep. And then cyber insurance or risk management. Alyson also used to work for insurance companies for years. That's another area that is growing. Cyber insurance wasn't a thing 20 years ago. Now it's a really big deal. And so being an insurance agent, being an insurance auditor, being an insurance investigator, all of those things happen around this idea of cyber insurance. And when somebody gets breached, are we going to pay out or not? How are we going to sell these policies and things like that? And then last one is technical writing and cyber journalism. We work with a lot of journalists, and I will tell you, even those who are technical writers and those who are journalists in the cyberspace, they are not necessarily super techy. I've done a lot of interviews where I had to stop and like start teaching them the things that they were asking about because they just really didn't understand it, right? And so getting the background and getting the cybersecurity education so you can speak in these roles and work in these roles as we move forward, that's going to be really critically important. Whereas in the past, it was like, well, we'll just take a journalist and then assign them to the cyber beat, right? And nowadays, we're more focused on making sure that everything is holistic, and we're having people who can do this from a journalist and cyber background.
Can I add something to all of these different roles?
Of course.
So one of the biggest soft skills for any of these roles that you're transitioning into or have interest in is mastering that gift of taking complex concepts and making them approachable, understandable, whether you're talking to higher ups in a C-suite, like a CEO, and getting them to understand why you need to put these parameters into effect for your organization, or trying to get the buy-in from other individuals, whether you're trying to communicate it as a journalist, so that it's like you take these big concepts and you make it so people understand what in the world you're talking about, but without alienating people too, right? You don't want to talk down. And so there's really that fine line and balance and practicing those skills of how do you take something complex and make it manageable, understandable, so that you can get the other person to be engaged with you. One of those cyber journalism people to look at if you have it is Kara Swisher, Swisher. She fell into the role in the 90s when it kind of started. She was doing other journalism at the time. She actually just released a book this summer called Burn Notice, or Burn Book. It's either Burn Book or Burn Notice. I'll have to grab it. But if you look her up, Karaswisher, she is very candid about how she got into tech and all of the tech people she has met and how she's been able to communicate those. I know you probably have it in your office too. I'm
Yeah, I
bragging.
was looking. It's in my bookshelf underneath.
Yeah, I have it over here.
Yeah.
But she's one that if you're interested in the cyber journalism, right, take a look at her career. It is completely fascinating how she got into it and then learned on the job, right, to make that adaptation because it became something she was interested in when nobody else wanted to touch it. And it's still that kind of field, being able to really bridge that gap for people.
Yeah, it is called Burn Book. In fact,
Burn Book. Thank you.
it's right here. See if I can make this show up here. There
I think we do have a question for you in the chat.
we go. Yeah. Go ahead. Ali, do you see the chat question?
I do. It says, what are some of the skills, hard or soft, that students or those who are considering career pivots should work on or emphasize when trying to get into non-technical roles? That's a great question, right? Go ahead, Jay. I know you got some thoughts.
I go first.
So a lot of the soft skills really obviously are getting into that confidence to be able to talk to people in that way, getting them to understand and be able to communicate in that approachable way. One of the things that we talk about, and I've talked about recently with some executives in the field, is understanding the business of the business, right? So being in cyber in a business is not the same for each business. If you are working in a banking industry, you need to understand what the concerns are of that banking industry or that organization you're working with. If you're working with a hospital, they're going to have different regulations and different things that they're concerned about. And so one of those tricks is really learning to figure out people. Quite frankly, actually, this was a conversation I had with somebody just earlier this week. He studies the psychology of cybersecurity. It's fascinating. He's got a book out. His name is Tim Tipton Jr. Comes from the cyber on the military side, but he also has a background in psychology and really looks at the psychology. And so what he was explaining to me was really looking at what are the motivations, how do people communicate, learning to read language. You know, for him, reading other people's body language is incredibly tough. Reading emotions is very tough. And he had to train himself due to his own challenges to be able to do that. And so that's one of those soft skills, is really trying to figure out what is the other person trying to communicate to you? How do you engage with them at the level of where they're coming from? Because just raising your voice, right, doesn't make people understand you better. So it is one of those things where it's really trying to figure out the business of the business, but also the person you're communicating with, and really trying to understand other people and how they understand and how they approach and how they communicate, so that you can get that buy-in, because that is one of the biggest and most difficult challenges when you're getting into cyber. It's really seen as a cost expense for a lot of organizations. And yet, when I'll give you a very quick short story. Sorry, Jay, I'm going on a detour. I actually met somebody in the medical profession a few weeks ago at, funny enough, like an awards event. And we were talking, and he was a CEO of a health organization here in Orlando. And he said, yeah, I know I've got to deal with cyber stuff, but it's just such an expense. And I said, you know what? Let's look at this differently. I said, I'm not here to sell you anything. I am not a cyber professional. You can't even hire me, but let's talk about this in an open way. And I said, I said, you provide mental health services to people, right? Yes. And you provide actual physical doctor services, patient doctor relationships for medical issues, right? Yes. And you have a pharmacy where people need to get their meds, right? Yes. And you have their medical records. I do. And you've got their financial records. I do. So now, if and when you get hacked, what happens? If you are offline for a month, what happens to those prescriptions? If your system's down, how do you give people the meds they need? How do you get them in front of the doctor for the actual physical stuff that they need? How do you help them with their mental health issues and challenges if you can't access the records, the scheduling, any of that? And God forbid, right? All of your stuff goes out to the public, and now you've exposed their medical records and their medical history, their PII information, and everything else. And you could see the light bulb turn on, right? It was no longer, oh, this is a cost, but oh, holy cow, I'm going to hurt a lot of people if I don't do this right. Right. So it's a lot of trying to figure out how to have those conversations to get the switch to flip so that you can get that buy-in.
Yeah, it can make sense. Yeah. And then as far as, hard and soft skills, communication, teamwork. For me, the things that made me very successful in my career is being able to translate highly technical concepts into highly understandable concepts. I use a lot of analogies when I'm talking about technical things. I always have. When I started out in the late 90s, early 2000s, I was doing a lot of tech support and working with small businesses. And back then, I mean, the idea of getting on the internet was a really big challenge for a lot of people, right? It was dial-up internet days. The internet, as we know it, the World Wide Web, only came out in 1995. I was doing this stuff in 97, 98, 99, right? So I was right at the beginning of this big explosion as everybody started figuring out, how do I get online? And American Online was kind of the thing everybody used everywhere, right? And there was all different dial-up providers. And I had people would literally go to Best Buy with them and help them pick out what computer they wanted, because it was all just so confusing, because they didn't understand the difference between different versions of processors and memory sizes and storage space and all of that. So I basically sit there and explain, like, well, if you're gonna, go with, this size hard drive versus this hard drive, this is what it's like in your office environment. I'll use the analogy of your hard drive's like a filing cabinet. Your memory is like the size of your desk. If you're working at a little desk and you only have this much space, you can only have 1 or 2 documents on your desk at a time. But if you have a big long table like you guys do right now where you're sitting, you can have lots of things open at the same time. And using those type of analogies help people make their purchasing decisions. So that was really useful. I think there's another question in chat. We'll come back to that towards the end because we're going to cover that already. And I want to make sure I keep you guys on time so you can get through everything, and then I'll take all your questions. All right. So the big question people have is, what certifications should I get? And now this is an eye chart, so I'm going to blow it up a little bit. and you're still not going to be able to see it. To be quite honest, if you want to see it, you'll have to go here to this website, pauljeremy.com/security-certification-roadmap. And on this roadmap, there is 481 certifications listed as of July of 2024. And I will tell you, those 481 are only the subset that he wanted to include. This is one person who builds this website. And there's actually about 1,800 different IT and cybersecurity certification exams out there. So these are not Pokemon cards. You don't want to collect them all. Okay. Instead, you want to find the ones that are important to you and matter in your career. And one of the reasons I bring this up is if you start going into this certification area, people say, oh, check the cybersecurity certification roadmap. It'll tell you what to get. I completely disagree. This is not a thing for you to go and get all these certifications. It's not even a thing to say, well, I want to be a security professional, which is this little blue sliver here. So based on that, I should get my GREM, my GWeb, my SCSPL, my CCSSLP, my DevOps portfolio, CASE, GMLE, CASS. You get the idea, right? And I'm looking at these, and out of
Alphabet soup. Yeah.
I have 0 of these. And guess what? I've been in security for 25 years, right? And I hire security guys all the time, and they don't have any of these. These are not that important, but they're listing them because they're under the security assessment software and security side. And I will tell you, like, no one cares about these certifications. Like, you're not getting hired because you have these. And so looking at this and going, which ones are important? For example, I see over here, they have Idle Master. And I have everything for Idle Master. It takes 7 certifications to get that. And I'll tell you that there's only about 100 people in the world who have Idle Master. So if only 100 people are Idle Master in the world, how important is it to an employer? Not very, because they can't find people who are qualified in it, right? And they don't ask for it on job applications. So really what tells you what you should get or not is what are employers asking for? What is your college requiring as part of your degree, if that's a consideration for you? And what area you want to grow in and get into, right? The recent 6 certifications are, I want to gain knowledge and verify I have that knowledge, or an employer is asking for it and I need to get through the applicant tracking system, which is all AI based. And so how do you get through these AI systems that are looking at your resumes? You have to realize that when it comes down to, and I think we had the same class we had last time, we talked a lot about ATS and how this works, but when you put a job application in, they're going through with a computer system and filtering out your resumes. And so if there's 1,000 people applying for this job, only about 50 of those are actually going to get to a human to look at, because the AI is going to rack and stack those based on the keywords in your resume. And one of those keywords that's really going to help is those certifications. If they said Security Plus required or Security Plus recommended in the job posting, you can be guaranteed the AI is going to filter you out if you don't have the word Security Plus in your resume. Because if you haven't gotten that certification, you're simply not going to get seen by a human, right? And so certifications are a way to help bypass that filter or to get through that filter by having the right keywords. As you look through here, there's PMP, there's CISSP, there's just a ton of them here. But I'll tell you, there's probably about 20 certifications that are commonly asked for over and over and over again. And that's things like Security Plus, Ethical Hacker, Pen Test Plus, some of the stuff around the NIST cybersecurity framework, the risk management framework around AI. CISSP is kind of the granddaddy, but you can't get that unless you have 5 years of experience working in the field. And so, even though it's a great certification to get, you can't get it for 5 years as you come out of college, right? And so all these things, I'm just pointing this out. And as you go through this and you click on each one in the website, it'll actually tell you a little bit about that certification. But I will tell you, there's just way, way too much here. And it's really not going to be that helpful for you. So the key takeaway here is there's a lot out there. How do you know which ones to take? Well, it really comes down to what do you want to do and what are employers asking for? Because again, why do you take a certification? Generally, it's to get a job or advance your career or get through a filtering system. All
And
right.
I added in the comment real quick, Jay. I put in Kim Crawley's new book. It's free on Kindle right now. So I gave you guys the Amazon link. It's the Ultimate Cybersecurity Careers Guide, Certifications, Colleges, and Getting Experience. And Kim is a professor in Canada and spent a lot of time going into all the different certifications that are available and making some recommendations based on experience, as well as how to get some great experience. And one of our board members, Jay, Michelle Thomas, is actually quoted in the back of the book when they talk about the hiring gap or the hiring skills gap, depending on who you're talking to, right? There's so much information about that out there. But what that really means and what we're looking at in the industry in real time, and it's very current. The book literally just came out in the last week or so. So it is, if you have Kindle for free on Amazon, it's worth taking a peek and seeing what's in there because it's a great resource.
Yep. the next thing we're talking about is, there's all these certifications. There's these 4 different categories, and you saw there's 400 plus certifications you could get. When should you get certified, and which certification should you get? Well, when to get certified really comes down to when do you need it, right? Um, I know a lot of colleges that have basically, if you're going through a cybersecurity program or an IT management program, they literally walk you through, as you go through your freshman year, you're going to get these 2 certifications. As you go through your sophomore year, you're going to get these 2 or 3 certifications. And by the time you get out of college, you've got, 8 or 10 certifications. Is this a good idea or a bad idea? Well, it depends, right? What is the reason for those certifications being there in that program? Some of them are because somebody at a certification company, greased some palms, made an impact somewhere at high levels of the government or the organization or the university, and have convinced them that, hey, you should put our certifications into your college courses, right? And so, is there actually a benefit to you, the student? Maybe, maybe not, depending on the certification. I'm not going to name names, but there are several colleges out there that literally every single class you take will end with a certification. And I see students who, when they come out after their, 4-year degree here, they've got 20 plus certifications. But a lot of these certifications, nobody will ever ask you for. For example, the CompTIA Server Plus certification. No one will ever ask you to have that certification. CompTIA Project Plus, same thing. CompTIA IT Essentials, same thing, right? Data Plus, same thing. Nobody's asking for these certifications in the marketplace. Yet, in that college, as part of their program, they're taking 11 different certifications through CompTIA, but really there's 3 at CompTIA that people care about, right? It's Security Plus, it's Pentest Plus, it's CYSA Plus. If it's not one of those 3, you're not going to get a job from it, right? So why are you spending all this money to get these certifications? Well, because the college told you you had to, right? And in those cases, they tell you when you have to get them. I will tell you my own personal belief is, as you're going through school, it is a good idea to get some certifications, especially if it aligns with the things you're learning. If you're taking a cybersecurity course, then you may want to go and get your Security Plus at the end of that, because you'll be pretty well versed in a lot of those things, and you can just do a little touch up and take a couple of practice exams, maybe read a textbook, and then go get your certification. And that's one that people will ask for, right? If you're taking a hacking class, go get your Pentest Plus. If you're taking a defense class, get your CYSA Plus. Those kind of things make sense. In addition to that, I kind of feel like getting yourself into a rhythm where you're doing 1 certification per year is a pretty good way to set yourself up for what you're going to be expected when you get into the real world. So as you're going through, by the time if you went through your college and got 4 certifications, 1 per year, you're going to come out, you're going to have your college degree, you're going to have 4 certifications, key certifications, ones that align with the role you're trying to go towards. And if you get some internships along the way, that's really going to help as well. So when to get certified really does matter about where you are in your career path. The best way to stand out is experience, which comes through internships, certifications, because it shows you have the knowledge. Internships show you can do the job. Certifications show you have the knowledge to do that job. And then you have those 2 together by the time you graduate. If you've done this where every summer you're going through and taking an internship for 6 to 8 weeks, you're going to have 3 different job experiences under your belt by the time you graduate. You're going to have 3 to 4 certifications, and you're going to be a standout candidate versus everybody else in the room, right? And so these are a good way to stand out. I'll pause there and pass to Alex if she has any comments on those 2 topics.
No, I think you're good.
All right, cool. Next, let's talk about the cost of these things, because they are not free, and they can get very, very expensive. Depending on the certification, they can range anywhere from $100 all the way up to the most expensive one I've seen is $8,000. Okay. So these can be very, very, very expensive. There's an organization called SANS, SANS, and they have the most expensive certifications out there, because to take those certifications, you have to go through a SANS course. And when you go through the SANS course, you get your exam voucher included in it. But those courses are about $8,000, right? And they're usually a 1 or 2 day course. So it's very, very pricey. It's very, very good training. The certifications are okay. I will tell you, most employers don't really ask for SANS training because it is so darn expensive, or SANS certifications because they're so expensive. Most of the people I know who have gotten SANS certifications because their employer paid for it. The IRS has a limit on employer reimbursement for certifications and training. It used to be a cap of $5,000 per year, and miraculously, SANS was always $5,000 a year back then. The IRS raised the limit to $8,000. All of a sudden, the limit went up to the cost for the certification went up to $8,000. Amazing, right? Because they know that their audience is not people like you and me who are going to pay for it ourselves. It's their employers going to tell them, you need to go get this training, go get this course, and they pay for it, right? So that's where SANS kind of fits in the picture. On the lower end of the spectrum, you have things like CompTIA. CompTIA certifications are anywhere from $250 to $500, depending on the level they are. And At Acylade, our certifications at the foundation level are $200, $199. If you go to the practitioner, they are $299. And if you go to our specialists or our developers, they tend to be $299 or $399, depending on the certification. So we try to keep it at the lower end because we don't want cost to be a factor. A lot of organizations will offer student discounts or academic pricing. CompTIA is really well known for this. This is one of the reasons why CompTIA is so embedded in a lot of the colleges across the country, is because they basically give 50% off to any college student or any university who's buying those vouchers. So right now, you guys all have a EDU account, right? Temple.edu email. You can go buy your certifications at CompTIA's academic store and get a 50 to 55% discount off the cost of that certification. Once you graduate, you can't. And so this goes back to the when should I take it? Well, it's half price if you take it now, but the day you graduate and lose that email, you now are going to be paying full price. And Security Plus, for example, the difference is $202 versus $404, right? Do that across 4 or 5 certifications, you've now saved yourself several $1,000s, right? And then the other way to get a cheaper or discounted exam is to participate in beta exams. Whenever a new certification comes out, before it goes into what we call production and a live student can take it at any time, it has to go through a beta testing process. Now, part of that beta testing process is they open up the exam, usually to anywhere from 200 to 1,000 people, and they offer it usually for $50 to $75. So instead of paying the full price of $400 or $500, you can get it for $50 or $75. When you take a beta, there are 2 limitations though. One is, or 3 actually. One is you don't know your results when you finish taking the exam. Normally, if you take a certification exam, as soon as you hit submit on the final question, it will say, congratulations, you passed, here's your score, or sorry, you failed, and here's your score, right?
Hold on. That does depend on the exam though, because there are some like the hacking ones where they have to grade them manually. And so there is a delay. But for ours, yes.
Well, yeah, but for 99% of certifications out there, they are computer-driven ABCD questions. And we'll talk a little bit about that a little later as well. But for those, usually, 99% of them, you're going to get your score immediately when you're done because there is no human grading of this stuff, right? There's a couple that are outliers, like OSCP, I think is what Ali's thinking of, the Offensive Security Certified Professional. You go into an environment, you hack for 2 days, then you have 2 days to write up a report, and then they grade your report. So you have to wait like a week to get your certification. But with a beta exam, they don't know who's going to pass and who's going to fail yet because they don't know what the cut line is. When we do certification testing, we don't just write an exam like we would in college and say, hey, here's 100 questions on the exam. Each question's worth 1 point. At the end of your test, we'll grade them all, count up how many you got right, and that's your score. So you got 80 right, you got an 80 out of 100, that's a B, right? Or whatever it happens to be. With certification exams, you may have 100 questions. And then what'll happen is during the beta, we see how everybody did. And so think about it like grading on a curve. We know we need a certain number of people to pass and a certain number of people to fail. And where we draw that line in the cut score is what we call the minimum qualified candidate. And so if that score is, let's say, 75%, then anybody above 75 is going to pass, anybody below 75 is going to fail. Well, most of these certifications don't use a flat percentage. We use a scaled score. And so we can actually choose where it is. For example, in our exams, some of them, you have to get 28 questions out of 40 right to pass. Some others, you need 32 out of 40 to pass. And that's all based on how students in the beta phase did. And so during this beta phase, which takes 1 or 2 months, we get everybody to take the exam. Then we as the developers take those results of the exams using statistical analysis and decide where should that cut line be. And then we can release your score. So if you take a beta, you're not going to get your scores right away. With CompTIA, it can take you 6 to 9 months to get that score back. So while you're getting a discount, you're not certified until they release those scores. And so it may be a while before you hear that. If you're in college, not really a big deal, right? If you're trying to get a job tomorrow, it's a big deal because you're not certified until you get those results. So that's thing 1. Thing 2, beta exams means there is no textbooks available. There's no video courses available. There's no training available because the exam is not live yet. Usually these beta exams take place 6 to 9 months before the live launch of the exam. The books and the training material come out when the live exam goes live. So for example, the A+ exam just came out on March 26th of this year for the latest version. That's when all the textbooks came out. That's when all the training came out. But the beta was last June. None of that existed. All you have to study from is what is called the exam objectives, which is basically a table of contents saying, here's the kind of stuff we're going to ask you questions about. And now you've got to go study yourself. I will tell you, if it's a version 2, 3, 4 of the exam, like CompTIA exams, they've been out for a while, you can just study the last version and you're going to cover 80% of the material anyway, and you'll still do okay. But if you're doing something brand new, like we just have a new one coming out into beta right now called the AISP, which is the AI Security Practitioner. If you're not already working in AI, it's going to be kind of hard for you to pass that exam, right? You're better off waiting until a course comes out and then taking that course to get that information. And so the beta exams are cheaper, but you do have to wait for the results, and you do have to wait for the training materials in a live exam. The other thing with the beta exam, the third thing is that it is going to look a little different than a real exam. Some of them will give you the same 90 questions in 90 minutes that they're going to have on the real exam. Others will actually change it and give you more questions because they don't know what questions are valid and which ones aren't. And that's why we're doing this beta testing. When we write questions as a certification company, we say, here's the question, 2 + 2 = 4. If I have a minimally qualified candidate, how many people do I think is going to get that right? Let's say I think it's 80%. I'm going to write that down as the exam person. As we write that question, we're going to have 2 independent SMEs come in and review that question. And they're going to guess where they think the number of students are going to get right. And if that's within 10%, it's a good question. It moves into beta. If I said it's going to be 80% and Alyson said it's going to be 20%, that question is deemed invalid and we throw it away and we start over because we're too far off statistically. But if she said 70 and I said 80, it'll go into beta. Now, when we give it to real students and 100% of them get it right, that's a bad thing too. Or if 0% get it right, that's a bad thing too. Or if 20% get it right, but we thought 80% would, obviously that question is too hard or too tricky, and we have to throw that out. And so to account for this on a beta exam, often you'll get more questions. So instead of getting 100 questions, if the real exam's 100 questions, you might get 150 or even 200 questions. When we do ours, they tend to be what we call a double length beta, which means you're going to get double the questions that you would have on a single exam because we're actually testing you on both forms that students are going to get in the live world later. And so we then will get whichever one is the better score is the one that we grade you on. And so you're actually getting 2 chances in one shot by doing it, which is a benefit, but you are getting a much longer exam that takes a lot longer to do. And so a lot of people find that to be tedious. So that's kind of the idea of cost and discounts. As a student, a lot of organizations will give you discounts anywhere from 10% to 50%, depending on the company. And beta exams are a cheap way to get it done as well. These certifications can be really expensive. So that's kind of the idea of cost and discounts. Allie, anything to add on that?
Yeah.
All right.
And we've got a couple of really good questions in the chat. So
Yeah, we got about 3 more slides, and we'll switch over to the Q&A.
just giving you the heads up.
Yeah, I've got them on the left side there. Cool. And then the next thing I want to talk about here was getting a free or cheap exam voucher, right? Some college courses will include it with the cost of your tuition. I've seen that in a lot of programs. Some vouchers are given away as prizes at conferences and CTFs. We give away a lot of vouchers at different conferences, CTFs, and events that we go to. And so it's another way that you can get a free voucher.
Can I add to that real quick?
Yeah, please.
So for you all, as part of this class, depending on what your interests are, I am prepared to give each of you a free voucher to take one of our foundation level certifications at Akylade. We'd like it, if you could take it within the next month or so type of deal. We offer free practice exams on our website within a member portal. And if you're interested, let your professor know and she can send me the emails, and then I can have Certiverse, our training partner, email you the vouchers directly so that you can schedule your exams and take them whenever you're ready. So our certifications are 24/7. It usually takes a day or two because there's a human proctor on the other side. But when you're prepared and you're ready to take it, you are more than welcome to. And I can get each of you for whichever course you want, whether it's AI Security Foundation, the Cyber Resilience, which is the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, or the NIST Risk Management Framework, which is our Cyber Risk Management Foundation. I can get you a free voucher for any of those 3 certifications. So after this, if you email your professor, she can send me a list of those emails and I can send you guys those vouchers. So it kind of goes into one of the questions that was in the chat, which was about GRC. So it's funny, there aren't really any specific GRC certifications that we have seen exactly dead on point. But what was recently recommended, funny enough, by other professors in the field were these Acylade certifications, especially the AI security, which looks into risk and that type of thing and regulations and how to apply it on that side. The cyber risk management, right? So it goes into the NIST risk management framework, which is GRC related, as well as our cyber resilience. So the 3 that I'm offering free, 1 per student, all of those would help you in your GRC pathway if you were interested. And it would help solidify which of those within GRC you would be most interested in as well by participating in those certifications.
Awesome. Yeah. And another place I see is a lot of times they'll do specials during the year, right? So Black Friday is a really common one. New Year's deals are another one because it's kind of like New Year, New You. I know, Allie, we did a big deal this year for New Year's where if somebody wanted to go to our website, they were able to buy the voucher and they got the course
course.
with that. And that price is actually cheaper than just buying the voucher by itself, because we were doing a New Year's special, if I remember correctly, right?
Yes, that was correct for the share.
Yeah,
Yep.
you know, Allie does different deals all the time. One of the things I'd recommend if you're trying to save some money is definitely sign up on the email list for the company you're looking at, because they will at various times do discounts or specials. We've done it where the New Year deal, for example, they got a pre-recorded course, they got a voucher, they got a textbook, and they got a one-time live session with myself and two other instructors to kind of answer any questions they had over like a 2-hour session on a Saturday. I've seen other companies where they do like an Arbor Day sale. I've seen Earth Day sales.
We saw an April Fool's Day sale.
Yeah, yeah, I was not real happy with that email, but yeah, it's okay.
It was not
So,
us.
yeah, those are my other companies in my marketing team decided to do an April Fool's sale where they basically sent people an email saying your order has been processed. And they go, just kidding, April Fool's, but we do have a sale and you can buy something here. And it was just, it felt very social engineering scammy to me. I don't know. I didn't like it. Anyway, so Black Friday and the two most consistent ones I see are Black Friday and New Year's. CompTIA specifically, Black Friday, they'll usually do 20% off. New Year's, they'll usually do 20% off. But again, as an academic, you're going to get 50% off anyway. So you're better off getting the academic pricing. But once you get out of school, these are things to keep in mind. And there's a lot of places where you can get free and low cost training. I've seen some companies do this where if you go through their training course, they'll then give you a voucher to take their exam for free. They'll do this at certain times of the year for certain people. Right now, ISC squared, it's isc2.org. They've been doing this for about 2 years now. They haven't stopped it yet. They have something called the Certified in Cyber certification, which I will tell you, no employer will ever ask you for. But they give away the certification for free if you complete their free training, because they're just trying to make a name for themselves in the entry level market, because they're known for CISSP at the top end of the market. And they're trying to get students earlier in the cycle so they can capture more money along the way. So they're doing that as a free or no cost training. And in their case, you know, it's okay to go take that and prove your knowledge and add one more thing to your certification resume if you want to. I'll tell you that one's not necessarily going to get you a job, but there are those like that happen from time to time. Another great place for online training, if you have library,
LinkedIn Learning.
usually you can get LinkedIn Learning or Udemy Business for free, depending on your college system or your library system in your local area. So those are two ways to do it. If you have to pay for courses, Udemy is a great place to go. UDEMY courses start at $10, and like I know my courses for the CompTIA certifications are usually anywhere from $10 to $20 on that platform. Competitors are $300 to $3,000 for those same courses, right? So it's a really inexpensive way to get trained if you need to. Yeah, and we had a question here at the bottom. Says, quick question: do they have to be renewed or recompleted in a timely manner? Yes, and we're about to talk about that right now, actually. Certificate renewals. It's a good time to ask that question. That's why I was like, oh, we'll get the questions after, because a lot of them I think I'm probably going to answer questions before you have them anyway. But yeah, certification renewals. So certifications, unlike your college degree, have to be renewed. You can't just do it once and you're good for life. In fact, certification development is done under an international standard known as the ISO 17024. And under the 17024, to be a true certification, it has to be time limited, no more than 3 years. And every 3 years, that person has to do continuing education, and the exam has to be rewritten every 3 years to keep exam security. So every 3 years, the exam changes somewhat. Some things are not going to change much. For example, pen testing today is pretty similar to pen testing 3 years ago, pretty similar to pen testing 6 years ago. And if you look at CompTIA, for example, they have a pen test certification. They now have 3 versions of it. The 3rd version came out last year. And I will tell you, the difference from version to version is about 10%, 90% of it's overlap. But they'll do a lot of shuffling of domains to make it look like it's all brand new. So basically buy new textbooks and new courses, even though the material is relatively the same, because the hacking methodology hasn't changed. The way they've added a couple of things like, oh, now there's AI attached, let's add that as a bullet item. But like I said, it's like 10% difference, not a huge difference. But these certifications do require you to get recertified or renewed every 3 years, because things do change, especially in areas like AI. We have a certification on AI security, as Alyson said. There's a foundation and a practitioner level. That certification will probably have to be updated every year to year and a half, because things change so darn fast in the AI world. Whereas a lot of companies are staying with the typical 3-year cycle, that's easier for them on a business side. It is not as good for you as a candidate because the information is not as new. Once you get a certification, you have 3 years. And then after 3 years, you either have to retake that same certification. So let's say you're Security Plus certified. Security Plus is $404. You took the exam today and you passed it. You have 3 years from today to either retake the new version of Security Plus when it comes out, because you can't take the same version. And remember, the versions change every 3 years. So you wait 3 years and you do it again. Or you could take the next higher level certification, which in the case of Security Plus would be CYSA Plus, Cybersecurity Analyst Plus, or Pen Test Plus for penetration testing. And if you pass that exam, your Security Plus will also get renewed. Or you could take what's known as continuing education, and CompTIA calls that CEUs, or continuing education units. For example, you're all sitting in a college class right now. If you were going through and taking a college class that related to security, pen testing, GRC, auditing, anything cyber, you could relate that back to Security Plus and say, I took this class. It was a 3-hour college class, which we all know 3-hour college class means you have 60 contact hours with your professor, whether that's online or in person. And that would then count as 60 CEUs, or continuing education units. You go into the CompTIA portal, you print out, a little unofficial transcript and say, yes, I took this course. Here was the syllabus of the course. It was 60 hours. Give me my 60 credits. And by getting those 60 credits, it will renew your certification, because for the Security Plus, you need to do 50 credits over a 3-year cycle. So taking one college class would meet that requirement. Taking a course on Pen Test Plus would probably meet that requirement, because there's the 40 to 50 hours, right? Or you could take a higher level exam. So these are kind of the ways you do it. The other thing you can do to save yourself on some money is to group your certifications together, because a lot of companies will allow you to renew your highest level certification, and that will automatically renew your lower level certifications. And even if it doesn't, they'll usually have at least a one-time fee for all your certifications instead of having to do it for each certification. For example, at Akylade, if you take your CCRF, for example, you can either renew that in 3 years by claiming hours, 30 credits over 3 years, or taking the exam again, CCRF, or taking a higher level exam of CCRP. But let's say you had foundation here and foundation here and foundation here, you get 3 of them, and you take the CCRP, that will actually renew your other ones because they're still in alignment with that. And so in a lot of companies, again, check each company specifically that you're interested in, because there are literally 1,800 certifications out there. But realize what your requirements are and track those to make sure you get them done in that 3-year cycle. For my CISSP, I took that back in 2009. Every 3 years, I have to do 120 credits to keep that active. And I've done that every year. I do 40 hours per year to keep that active. And I have since 2009. So I've had that certification now for 16 years, because I don't want to take that test again. It was brutal. It was painful. I don't want to do it again, right? So I'm continuing my education that way. And then certifications, they don't guarantee you a job. There's a common misconception that you have to have a certification to get a job. And if I get a certification, people are going to hire me based on that certification. I will tell you, the two are not exclusively connected. Will certifications help you get a job? Yes. Will certifications guarantee you a job? Heck no, right? Like I talked about before, if you're looking at a job posting, it says, required Security Plus or recommended Security Plus. If you have that certification, you are going to get into the consideration pile. It doesn't mean you're going to get the job, right? But if you don't have that certification, guess what's going to happen? The system's going to reject your resume, and we're not even going to see it. So certifications are important, but they're not the one thing that's going to necessarily get you a job. Just like your college degree. Having a college degree is a requirement for a lot of jobs, but it will not guarantee you a job. It will at least get you a chance at that job, and to be able to sit down in front of a hiring manager and make your case of why you're the right person for that job. Also keep in mind, certifications are not substitute for real world experience in most cases. There are a handful of certifications, like the Akylade certifications, that are practical and they're hands-on. And so employers look at those as a replacement for some experience levels. But in general, if you're getting a Security Plus, a Pen Test Plus, a CEH, a CISSP, it's not going to be a substitute for real world experience, because they're knowledge-based exams based on ABCD question. And just because you can answer an ABCD question on what is social engineering does not mean you can perform social engineering, which is what I need you to do as a pen tester, right? On the other hand, if you're taking a hands-on practical certification like OSCP, which is a hands-on hacking certification, and you pass it, I know you have enough knowledge to at least be able to do the reconnaissance and the basic penetration testing of a junior pen tester. And so I may hire you on based on that. Same thing with a lot of the Akylade practitioner certifications or developer or specialist certifications. Because we have a hands-on certification, companies that know about these, they will use that as a substitute for experience. In addition to your certifications, you want to gain experience. How do you get experience when you're in college? Internships, number 1. Projects, number 2. Clubs and activities, number 3. If your college has a cybersecurity team that participates in those competitions, join it, because that will help set you out among other people. Because now you have provable things. You say, I was on the championship team that placed first in the Southeast region, right? Or whatever it was. That's going to help you when you're standing out with employers. Other things you can do, capture the flag competitions. They're free, they're online. go to ctftime.org. You'll see there's competitions happening all the time. And some of these only have 5, 10, 15 people in it. But if you place first, second, or third, put that on your resume. Place third in the international hackathon, right? Blah, blah, blah. They don't know there was only 20 people in that hackathon if you place third. I've been to some where there's literally 5 people. So placing third is not hard. But they think automatically that placing third means, oh, there was thousands of people, right? You're good. Or even if you place first or second, that's even better, right? And then volunteering is another way that you can get some experience. When people won't hire you, work for free if you need to as an intern or a volunteer. If you're religious, go to your church, see if they need help with their computers and their cyber stuff. I guarantee you they do. And you can do that as a volunteer and get some credit there. Anything to add on that?
Yeah, I was just going to add something that you brought up recently in a lot of ways about creating your page and documenting your journey about what you're learning in a public format like medium.com, and showing off your skills as you're learning them. And that way they can see what you're doing, how you're doing it. And if they find you and Google you, they're going to say, oh, look, this person has mastered or worked through these types of challenges. They can see your thought process. And this really goes to Dr. Williams's question, which was, what are some tips for students to get the foot in the door outside certifications? Essentially, how do social science students get around the AI that looks at their resume to speak to a person and demonstrate their skills and abilities? So if you're able to show those skills and abilities and they are searching for you on the net to kind of see, and you're documenting those skills and abilities as you're learning them as part of your journey. Jason has worked with other organizations that have seen students, watch your trajectory take off because they're finding them and they look like experts when they see them on the internet, sharing that experience and sharing what they know and, being able to communicate it, right? Going back to those soft skills in a way that they can read it and go, okay, that makes sense. I'll let you add to that, Jason. So it was your experience. I'm just sharing as a reminder.
Yeah. So, with one of the programs I work with, which is software development, these are coders. As they're going through their program, it's designed to be a 90-day program. And my buddy who runs this program, his biggest challenge is he can't get students to complete the 90 days. And the reason is because they keep getting hired before they finish the course. And the reason is the way he set up his course in his program is that as they're going through, every day, those students are journaling, for lack of a better term, but they're reading Medium articles and LinkedIn articles. And so if they're learning, for example, he teaches game development. So, if you're a video gamer and, you look at your character and he's walking and his arms are doing this, right? That's a fixed joint or hinge joint here and a fixed joint here. He'll have them write an article of 300 to 500 words on how to develop a, hinge joint to make your robot look more effective in Unity. And they'll write this up, they'll take some screenshots, and it's like, it's not today I learned this. Instead, it's, if you ever wanted to learn how to make a fixed joint, here's how you do it. And they're basically now putting themselves, even though they're a student, as the expert. And by doing that, when an employer starts Googling you, they go, oh, I'm interested in this person. Let me look, Alyson Laderman. What experience does she have? Let me look at her LinkedIn profile. Oh man, she's got 40 different articles on here about all these different game development things. Man, she must be a great programmer. I'm going to hire her, right? And that's what's happening with these people. They're jumping right to the front of the queue because they have documented experience, even though it wasn't real world experience. It was just classroom based experience. But they're building things that by the end of their program, these students already have built several video games and they can do all the development and they're proving it through these articles. And so it's been really, really effective there. I'm working on building a similar program for cybersecurity. It's not out yet. It's one of the things on my to-do list for later this year. But I've seen this be extremely effective in the game development program I'm partnered in. And so now we want to do this in the cyber world as well.
I'm going to read a couple more questions, Jay. If that's actually, you've got a few more. Go ahead.
Yeah, I got one more slide, then we're going to go into the questions. So final bit of advice here. Don't rush into expensive exams, right? These things are expensive. And if you got your CISSP today, like I said, there's a 5-year requirement of experience. Let's say you worked all through high school and college and you've got the 5 years of IT experience. You could take that exam, but is it going to be helpful to you? Probably not, because you're going to be too junior to really get the benefits of it, right? You really want to pick certs that are aligned with the job you want, and you want to start with the free resources and then grow from there. It doesn't have to be an expensive journey. I know a lot of people that, oh, I got to go buy this $5,000 course to get certified. You don't. I can tell you, you can buy a $20 textbook. For example, the certification we have for game development, you can take a course on it. And those courses are, 10, 20, 50, $100, right? Or you can go buy a textbook like this one that was, $20 on Amazon. And this covers everything that we cover on the exam. And this book wasn't even written by us. It just happens to align with our curriculum. This one is called Unity 6 Game Development with C#. And we have a CCSD certification, which is a C# certification. We don't have a textbook for it, but if you go buy this textbook, it'll cover everything we cover. Or you can go through our courses, and one day we might have a textbook ourselves. In a lot of our certifications, we put out our own textbooks as well because we don't find there's good enough free resources out there. The other thing is build a portfolio, write those blog posts, share your OSINT reports, participate in CTFs, get involved with the open source community. All these are things you can take credit and experience for on your resume. And then employers are going to look at it and go, oh, you were part of the Nmap open source project. And even as a non-technical person, you can be a part of an open source project because guess what? They need documentation. They need technical writers. They need translation. They need all sorts of things that go beyond the coding of the project. But now you're going to be listed as a contributor, and now you look like you really know what you're doing, right? And by that point, you probably will know what you're doing because you've gotten that experience. All right, we're going to go to all of your questions. So let me pull these up here.
Here, I can read them to you, Jay, because I've got them up. So it
Okay.
says, "Hi, Jason, Alyson. I would be interested in getting the CISA or CISM later down the road, but those require a couple of years of experience. What are
Yes.
some certs I can get my hands on as a college student right now in the GRC field?"
Yeah, so if you're interested in GRC, what I would recommend is Alyson made the kind offer of giving you all free exam vouchers, but she didn't tell me what she was going to do. But awesome, thank you, Al.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Surprise.
man, for GRC, you want to understand the NIST cybersecurity framework. That is the #1 tool in GRC right now. It is really, really hot. Everybody loves it. It's been around since 2015. The newest version came out last February 28th of 2024. And it's really, really, really important and used everywhere. So I would recommend that one. It's the Akylade Certified Cyber Resilience Fundamentals. And if you email your professor, she will hook you up through Alyson with a free exam voucher, so it won't cost you anything to take it. The textbook for that is Mastering Cyber Resilience, version 2 or 2nd edition. There's an ebook version of that in our platform. Are you giving that to them as well, Ali?
I can do that.
So
Yeah.
for the CCRF, if you decide that one, we already have a textbook available for that one, and we can send you a personalized PDF of that when we give you the exam voucher. For risk management, the book is currently being written by the author, so we don't have that one yet. And for AI, the book is coming out in the next 30 days or so, so we don't have that one yet. But if you get a free voucher for that one, because that's the path you're choosing, we can put you on a list to get you a copy of that one, what's published. But those would be the ones I would look at. A more generic answer is Security Plus, but honestly, Security Plus is so wide and generic. It's going to teach you terms and terminology and definitions and things like that, but it's really not going to narrow down into anything you can do as a job role. And that's why I like the CCRF, because it really does focus on how do you do this as a GRC analyst, as a cyber resilience consultant, and how do you use these things in the real world.
So actually, that leads into the next question, Jay, where they say, for students who are interested in multiple fields, are there any general certifications that can be taken as entryways into cybersecurity, or would you really suggest targeting a specific 2 or 3 fields in terms of certifications?
Yeah, as far as if you're like, I don't know where I want to go yet, and I'm still trying to figure this whole thing out, there's 2 recommendations I'd have for you. And not necessarily certifications either in this case, because you're still trying to figure out where you want to go. The first one is what is now called Tech Plus, which is by CompTIA. It's a relatively short course. It's about 10 hours. I'm not trying to sell you my course, but I do have a course on Udemy for that, and it's like $10, so it's pretty inexpensive. I will tell you, do not get that certification. The certification itself, no one's going to ever care, right? They just don't. I'm going to save you $200 here. Don't bother getting the certification. But the course is really good because what they've done in Tech Plus is they kind of use it as an intro to the world of technology, right? So there's hardware, there's software, there's a little bit of scripting, there's a little bit of database and data management, there's a little bit of AI, there's a little bit of security, there's a little bit of networking. And so you kind of have these 6 domains spread out across all these different things. And as you go through it, you'll kind of go, oh, you know what? I don't really like hardware, but I really like software. Or I don't like either of those. I really like networking. I really like cyber. Or I really like this. And it'll kind of help figure out where you want to go. Then the first certification you want as a generalist is the CompTIA Security Plus. It's the most well-known, most asked for. The big challenge with CompTIA Security Plus is it's not going to get you a job by itself, because there are 5 people certified for every 1 job posting that asks for Security Plus, right? Compare that to something like CISSP, where for every job posting, there's only 0.8 people certified who can fill those jobs, right? But you have to have 5 years of experience, right? And so there's this difference. But getting your Security Plus will get your Security Plus on your resume, which is going to be needed on most cybersecurity jobs out there. And that'll at least get you in the running for it. And then once you get that, you're also going to be more experienced across that. And you go, you know what? I really like pen tests. I really like defense. I really like firewalls. I really like social engineering, whatever it is you like. And then you can get the 2 or 3 certifications that are relevant to those specific areas. But starting that general, get a good baseline by going through Tech Plus to figure out where I want to go. And then if you do like security based on that, then go into Security Plus, get that certification. And then from there, you can take your next step what specialized area you want to be in.
And if I could just add just a little bit on that, and I know we've got a few more questions. If you're not already on LinkedIn, get on LinkedIn. And I hate to say follow influencers because that's not my jam, but take a look at the people that have knowledge in the field that are sharing their insights, that are, not necessarily the thought leaders that come up with nonsense, right? Like, oh, follow me and buy this shiny object. But if there are people that are actually sharing their knowledge in the field, you can go through and kind of drill down through their newsletters and see for free, right? What are they talking about? There's definitely, gosh, there's hundreds that are out there that'll talk about either hiring trends or what skills they're looking for, or what are the shifts and the changes. Read the daily articles that come up in the field so you can go, oh, this seems like more of a path I want to learn more about or not. It's a free resource. It just takes a little bit of time, and you can get those newsletters to your inbox for free. So just poke around on LinkedIn. You'll see a lot of people where you go, oh, wait, this person works for Microsoft and they're writing the exams for Microsoft, right? Or this person works for BlackBerry and they're doing GRC for BlackBerry. See if there's people that you want to follow. You don't even have to connect. You can just follow them, sign up for the newsletters, get that info, and really start fleshing out where in that big cybersecurity umbrella you want to be in without costing any money, right? Just a little bit of your time. So let me pop to the next.
I can ask the next one to you because it says this one's for Alyson.
I'd have.
With Alyson, in cybersecurity policy and law, what courses are the basics of getting into the field that as college students they can take? And what are some certifications that are required for entry-level jobs? So I'll let you take the first half and I'll take the second half if you want.
Sure. So it's interesting. So when you're looking at how to get into that field, a lot of it is going to come into critical thinking, risk management, right? Those legal courses, how to read and understand laws, but also how to apply them. And really, it's interesting when you go to law school, you don't learn the law, you don't learn specific law, you learn to think. They basically spend 3 years beating out of you all the ways you learned to think before and teaching you a new way to think and analyze and do that type of stuff. And so when you're looking at it from that perspective, it's really taking some of those philosophy courses, taking some of those law analysis courses. If there's like any pre-law programs kind of getting in there, it's not just, oh, this is criminal law, unless you want to get into forensics, and that's obviously a different issue. But if we're talking policies and regulation, what you're really looking at is how are laws created, how are laws interpreted, how are laws applied. And so any courses that give you that kind of framework and perspective is a good way of doing it, both in thinking about it, but also in how to write about it, right? Legal writing is a very different writing, especially if you end up practicing law in those areas and learning how to write those types of privacy policies. A free thing you can do now, which is going to sound insanely boring unless it's totally your thing, go on different websites, pull up their privacy policies and read them, and then see what they cite to, and then pull that up and read that, right? Because not every one of them is the same. And if they are, there's big problems because they copied it, which means they're now being held to a standard they didn't realize because they were agreeing to certain things. So number one, don't go copying stuff. But a great way to learn for free is really pull up people's privacy policies, look at what they're saying they're going to do with your data, what they're not going to do with your data. As boring as it is, the next time that Apple sends you one of those, here's our new terms and conditions, read through it because someone was paid money to write it, right? And go down to the privacy sections, go down to the regulations, go down to the AI sections and how they're going to use your data in their systems, and start kind of playing through those to see if it really is something you're interested in. Because I can tell you, even as someone who's interested in it, it's really kind of boring, and not, right? So it's fascinating to see how it's in there if you're into it, but it gets very complex. And so look for the citations of what they're doing, pull up GDPR, pull up the EU AI Act, look at some of these regulations, set up free Google alerts that tell you about things as the laws are changing, right? Follow those writers that are talking about these things in real time as they come up. Find blogs that work with this. Like I said, the easy, cheap way to do this, i.e. free, you can set up Google alerts that anytime something comes up with either public policy and law, cybersecurity, kind of narrow it down. But I get stuff all the time. Something just came out in Malaysia, something just came out in the Philippines, and see where those laws are going so that you can do it. As far as specific courses, because Jason mentioned earlier, courses take a long time to develop. You're looking at those bigger how to think courses, as opposed to they're not going to necessarily give you current law because law changes as quick as the technology does. And because it's a relatively new field, there's not necessarily, Jason will tell you what he thinks which ones will align. But other than the bar exam, there's no specific certification that says you can or can't practice in this area. When you become a lawyer, it's a very general field. It's literally you walk out going, I can do any of these things. I can do family, I can do bankruptcy, I can do criminal, I can do anything I say I want to do. The key is being competent in that area. And really what they're teaching you is how to train yourself, how to educate yourself so that you can niche down into a specific practice area and not commit malpractice. So there's not really in the legal field a specific cert for AI or public policy. And if you're lucky enough to find a law firm or an organization that's looking for that, that will train you, it's very rare, right? So a lot of it is learning how to educate yourself and getting that mindset, how to question, how to analyze, how to do the risk analysis, and how to move your way through those systems.
Yeah, I think it's a good answer. And I think a great point, right? When you're a lawyer, you are a generalist, and then there are lawyers who specialize in things. Right now, my girlfriend and I were looking for a Canadian tax attorney, right? Because we have questions about her moving from Canada to the US. And that's going to trigger a whole bunch of different tax related things for her and her business, right? And so, while Allie is a lawyer, she's not a tax lawyer, right? But she could be. She would just have to go self-study and then say, I'm Dion, I'm a tax lawyer, right? But these people that we're hiring, are people who have been doing it. They've got 20 years of experience doing tax law because they decide, you know what, out of all the areas of law, I want to be a tax lawyer, right? It's the same thing with cyber. Cyber is a huge field that you can do a lot of different things in. And you might say, you know what, I really like pen testing. I'm just gonna be a pen tester, right? And that's all you specialize in. So
And you get a 5-minute warning, Jay. So
okay, cool. And then as far as certifications for that, I would say the biggest ones for a lawyer would be Security Plus because it gives you a good overall foundation. When I worked in the government, all of our lawyers were required to get that because it let them understand what we were talking about when I started talking about a firewall or a unified threat management system or a router or a switch. So at least they had a basic understanding of the terminology. And then the other one that may be useful would be things like risk management certifications. For example, the CCRF that CMRF certification we have, the risk management certification, CRMF, sorry, or the PRF, which is the cyber resilience one about the cybersecurity framework. Both of those are ones that would be pretty useful for those going into law. Next question here. Do the majority of certifications need to be renewed or completed? Yes,
we've already done that. Yep. So I'll help you out. I'll ask you answer quickly.
All right.
What certs do you see a good amount of employers looking for digital forensics?
So with digital forensics, they are more vendor specific. So really the two big ones are NCASE and FTK, which are the two big software pieces. There's an NCASE certified investigator, and there's an FTK certified investigator. I can't remember the exact name of those certifications because they are digital forensics is a very small field. I think we talked about this last time I was here. In all the cybersecurity roles out there, 5% are digital forensics. So, 5 out of 100 jobs are digital forensics, right? If you go to CYSA and cybersecurity analyst, it's like 50% of the jobs are that. So just know going into digital forensics is hard. Most people coming into digital forensics come from a law enforcement background, and then they learn the technology side. It's easier for us to train a cop to be a forensic analyst than it is to take a computer person and make them a forensic analyst. Not because of the technology. Doing the digital forensics is not real hard these days. We use software. It does most of the hard work for us. And level 1, level 2 people, you're pretty much just point and clicking your way through systems. The biggest challenge is making sure you're maintaining that chain of custody and the evidence requirements that are needed and to be able to support your evidence in court when you're called upon as an expert witness. And that is easier to do when you have somebody who is a cop who is used to evidentiary rules and following the law. So when I was a digital forensic analyst, I went into a classroom to get certified. There was 30 of us in the classroom. 2 of us were technicians. The other 28 were all FBI special agents, Army CID special agents, CIA, NSA, police officers, etc. They came from the law enforcement side and they learned tech. We came from the tech side to learn law enforcement, and we struggled much more. When we came through, I will tell you, I kept getting yelled at by the instructor because I'm going through and doing things the way I would do them. And as a digital forensics person, not trying to do it in a law enforcement capacity, I can do whatever I want as long as I get the data, right? If Valley has a crashed hard drive and says, get the data off, I can do whatever I want. But if I'm collecting that because I'm going to use a case against her because I think she has child porn on that, well, then I have to do it in a certain way, right? And that's the other thing with digital forensics is you're going to see the worst in freaking humanity. I've done this job for 5 years. It is brutal on your mental health. So just be aware of that. But there's not really a cert for digital forensics except for the tool specific certs, which is FTK and NCASE, and it's spelled ENCASE, all one word.
Okay, let me try. I'm gonna try and answer this last. I know we got two more. So knowing the different certs can be acquired by different third-party orgs. How does one know which organizational certification is better than the other, and what makes them different, unique as a company to an individual or hiring company? So I'm gonna, if I could take this one real quick, Jay. So not all certs are made the same. Sometimes people just make a cert. It's two people in a room. Sometimes, as Jason mentioned earlier, it's the ISO 17024 credentialing where you have to go through a beta exam. You have to have a group of experts design them, create the job task analysis. People that do ISO like Akylade should pretty much have that available and you can see that information. Where it comes down to what they're looking for, look at job posts and
Yes.
you'll see which ones they value. Because as Jason's mentioned, I think in our last session as well, there's several ethical hacking certifications. And there's one that's not ISO accredited, but it's the best of the bunch, right? As far as actual practical skills. Now, the government can't use it because it's not accredited, but a lot of employers prefer it because it's more practical. And so it really is a case by case basis on what the organization is looking for as far as skills and what these certifications validate and what you're trying to get out of that process. The thing to remember, a certificate is not a certification. So as you're going through this and you see somebody says it's a certificate, well, then it probably hasn't gone through that rigorous process of becoming a certification through that ISO standard with experts being developed. It's probably a few people in a room saying, here's some questions. That's not obviously how we do it or CompTIA and some of the other ones. And I know time is up, but I don't want to miss the last question.
I'll answer that one as well. But yeah, the one thing I want to say on that is the number one thing is look at job postings. What are employers asking for? There are thousands of certifications. Go with what employers are asking for, or go with things that need to give you the keywords you want on your resume. For example, Akylade CCRF is going to get you that keyword of NIST cybersecurity framework when you write down what you learned in that certification as part of your 2 lines in your job resume. Last question was about the difficulty of the exam. Being an undergraduate student, what's an appropriate amount of failed attempts? I would say 0. You don't want to fail because every time you fail and you have to retake it, you've got to pay again. So if you take Security Plus and you pay $200 with the student discount and you have to take it twice, well, that costs you $400 now and you're paying the same as somebody else. It's not, remember, these exams are not about experience in the most case. It's about learning and then regurgitating information on the exam. And most of these are multiple choice questions. So if you've gone through a course, if you've taken some practice exams, if you've, read a book, you'll be able to pass this exam. Just like, when you walked into your classroom here, you probably didn't know the material. You couldn't take the final exam day one, but you went through the material and by the end of the course, you'll take your final exam and you'll pass it, right? Same thing. Just knowing it's there, you'll be able to study and do it. I know we're out of time, so I'll pass it back to the professor. Thank you all for your questions and hopefully that was helpful.